Well, as most of you know, I'd much rather be sitting out there in the pew today than being up here. But I asked the deacon and Pam to preach for me today just a few minutes ago, and they said they weren't prepared. So it's just going to be me today then. But Kirk can be persuasive, and so here I am. While he has gone someplace having fun where it's nice and warm and sunny and lots of water and so on. But I'm happy to be with you, really am. Wise men, magi, I would say that we want to reimagine a little bit who they are by simply calling them by the name scholars, because I think that probably comes closer. Because oftentimes we say, oh, they're astrologers, and we think about, the people who write the newspaper ones. Not really, because they had star charts, and they had maps of the world, and they had access to libraries, and they had some degree of understanding of geometry and all that kind of thing. So they were no small thing for them to say, yeah, we have looked into the sky and seen this star. It's a portent of something. And so I would say philosophers, scholars, astronomers, learned men, right? This is who they were. Where were they? Probably Persia, maybe Babylon, someplace in the east, and there were centers of learning in those places, so it's not a stretch to think that might be where they're from. And it's not unusual to think that these wise people who were studying the history of various countries and knew the maps of the world, known world at the time, and the structure of the heavens might say, this star, what was the star? There have been scientists who speculated about that too, and some have said a conjunction of planets, and some say a supernova. You can read about it because the research is out there. Arthur C. Clarke wrote about that. Well, I don't know, but for some reason they took it as a portent that there would be an event taking place in Jerusalem or near Jerusalem that would be worth going to, and it would be the birth of a new king. And so they went to pay homage, which is to show their respects. We'd say in the South, to pay our respects. We went to pay our respects, and that's what they do. They traveled a long ways to do that. Now, as according to custom at the time, if you're coming from a far country and you're an emissary, so to speak, from that place, you want to go and see right away the authorities in that place you're going to. So it makes sense to go see Herod and Herod's court. And that was their first mistake. Herod was a despot and not a good person. And Herod was not happy to hear that they had seen a star that was indicating to them that there would be a king born for the people of Israel. Because Herod says, well, that's me. I'm the king, and I want to stay the king, right? And so this is where the story turns south. Up to that point, it's all creche, right? It's all them coming, and it's stars, and it's animals, and it's beautiful hymns, and it's all of that, until Herod gets involved, and then it becomes a kind of political mess of grasping and lying and intrigue that eventually turns to a flight into a foreign country where the young family becomes refugees, and the story really ends with genocide. And that celebration we kind of passed over. It would take place on December the 28th. The Holy Innocents. Well, it goes badly, and it turns south, and so it does not really evolve the way one would think. But we don't call that series of events Herod's folly, and we don't even call it the wise men's visit much, although there's books about that. We call it Epiphany. So what's that about? We call it Epiphany. A friend of mine once said that he thinks that everybody in heaven is going to have a big bruise right here, and their forehead's going to slope back, because they'll get there and go, I see. All of us are going, whoa. That's an epiphany, right? When something you become aware of something, where it's a life-changing insight. It's a revelation. And Paul, in the letter you heard read from Ephesians, he says, I had a revelation. He could have said, I had an epiphany, right? I came to a new understanding of what God is about in the world, is what he's saying. And so Epiphany becomes that moment where a new understanding came to God's people about what God's purpose was in the world, and that is, in the words of, we'll paraphrase the words of Paul, the Gentiles are in. Right? Now, keep in mind that if you're a Jew at that time, and the people of Israel considered themselves to be in, and everybody else out. And that was an understanding they had for a long time. That's what Gentile means, is you're out, basically. And so to say in any moment in time that you have had an insight, an epiphany, that all the Gentiles, which means everybody else in the world, right? If you take any category you have of us and them, and then say all of a sudden, God includes all the thems, and they're coming for dinner, that would be what this was like, right? This insight. The symbolism of the wise men from the east in Matthew's narrative is the same message as the more literary description or the more discursive description there in Ephesians, because he's imagining and telling the story of these non-Jews who are coming from a faraway place to get down on their knee and pay homage to a Jewish child, right? So that's the imagery here. And like I say, it goes south. But there is more to it than that. So if you take a series of epiphanies and you string them together over time, you can achieve something that might be called enlightenment. And enlightenment is a state of being. It's not a moment in time where you go, aha, although those are good. It's a state of being where one is fully awake all the time, able to see and know and understand the depth and the height of God's love for us, and that as it resides in the world around us, as it resides in the people we meet, as it resides in history, and as we can see it through science. It's a powerful thing to think about being enlightened in that way. Enlightenment, in various different ways of phrasing it, is actually the ultimate goal of all religions that I know of. I mean, there are intermediate goals, being good, doing good things in the world, all those kinds of things. Enlightenment of humankind is the ultimate goal. So what happened with the Epiphany is that people came to understand that the person of Jesus isn't confined to a human being living in Palestine in a certain time period, but has become a cosmic figure. Christ is cosmic. By cosmic, I mean not even worldly, right? To say, oh, he's a world figure. No, he's a cosmic figure. How do we know that? The wise guys knew it. They looked into the cosmos and saw signs of the Christ coming. Christ is a cosmic figure, which means his meaning and purpose and the connections that Christ makes go far beyond any of the categories we can possibly imagine in this tiny planet floating in space. It's so much bigger than we can possibly imagine. So take two things and put them together. Let's put together the idea of becoming a fully enlightened people and the idea of a cosmic Christ. Now, about enlightenment, let me say this about that, to help you imagine it better, perhaps. An epiphany would be the altar rail today. When you come forward and receive the bread, and you put your arms across into the holy place, and you receive the holy bread in your hand and consume it in your body, that's an epiphany, a moment of insight, a movement of the Spirit into your life that's immediate and real and clear and fleeting. Enlightenment is to imagine that that is your whole life, that that's the way you feel and breathe and live constantly. So what would it be like for the world and for all of us if an enlightened people comprehended what it really means to have a cosmic Christ? Amen.